Good evening, everybody. My name is Bob Christensen. I'm happy to be your leader here this evening for this CMT webinar on answering your questions about bracing and CMT by somebody who wears braces and has CMT 1B, and that is David Misener. And I just want to say as we start here, I have had the experience to visit with David up at his Clinical Prosthetics and Orthotics up in Albany, and if anybody's ever up in that area and is interested in seeing what he can do, it's really a great experience to be treated by somebody who knows what you're going through. So moving forward, David is with us tonight, and he is a board member of the CMTA, the advisory board, and he's going to be here presenting his material and also everything about answering questions and all of that. So I just want to call out a couple of things real quick. On the right side of your screens, you probably see the controls for the webinar. Feel free to post questions as we go along. David has agreed to have me jump in and pause where needed to ask questions about particular slides or topics he's talking about. So we'll make this as interactive as we can as we go through this this evening. So that's right on the right-hand side of your screen, the questions. And if you need to type a message to me directly, you can use the chat window there and just choose Bob Christensen in the send to. And I'll be sure to monitor both of those as we go through. So with that, I will turn it over to David, and hope you all enjoy the webinar. David?
All right. Thank you, Bob. And I want to thank everybody for this opportunity to present this, and hopefully there's going to be some learning that can occur tonight. First, a little bit about myself. So I do have Charcot-Marie-Tooth. It was quite prevalent in my family, starting with my grandfather and a lot of aunts and uncles and cousins. And strangely enough, none of us wore braces. And I just carried on throughout my life and found that human kinetics just seemed like a really interesting topic for me to learn in university. And so I learned a lot about how the human moved. And as I was doing all of this university education, I was a huge hobbyist as well. I was the guy who built remote-controlled cars and who painted their bicycles. And so I was just always mechanically inclined. So it just really seemed to work well for me to fall into this career of an orthotist and prosthetist. I'm originally from Canada, and we moved down to Albany area to, I guess, first do my residency, and then eventually became an owner of Clinical Prosthetics and Orthotics. And, I guess we became a little bit more involved with the CMT Association when I became a father. So things change when you become a father. I dealt with CMT in my own way and our family's own way, but when I became a father, that's when I really started reaching out into the community, because I think you just ultimately want to do the most that you can for your children. So what my goal of tonight's presentation about is to first review the basic goals of orthoses. And I'd like to review the common challenges that are associated with the common CMT foot and ankle. And then what I did is over the year, I have gathered some questions, and I've gathered some questions over the last week from those few who have registered for the seminar. And then Facebook, it has some fantastic groups, CMT parents, CMT athletes, and then of course the CMT Association also has some questions that are posed. And I've tried to gather questions from all of these areas. So what do we achieve with orthotics? I guess these I would consider would be the main primary traditional goals. We'd like to prevent a deformity. So a deformity is just simply classified as anything that's outside of what would be textbook normal. Our goal is to support and align all of the bony structures of the foot. And with those bony structures, we've got muscles and tendons, and all of these things work together to allow a joint to function properly. So an orthosis can either limit motion around a joint or can enhance motion around a joint, depending on what the needs of the brace would be. We also like to enhance balance. We want to support the body. We'd like to also reduce fatigue to our muscles. And all of this combined comes into the one major piece that is, I think, of utmost importance here, which is to really improve or maximize our lifestyles. We don't want to be limited by CMT in any way. We want to be able to be the best that we can be. So as an orthotist, we begin our evaluation. A lot of times it's just watching someone walk in from the patient room. When we're in the patient room, that's when we start talking to really find out what your goals are. We need to look at what your range of motion. And the range of motion is how the foot and ankle can move around the joint. Have you lost any kind of range of motion? And if you've lost some range of motion, that sometimes will direct the foot to operate in a certain way. We like to look at the muscle strength. How strong is it? Do you have the strength to lift your foot up during swing phase, or does it drop down? We've all heard the term drop foot. So the drop foot is derived from all of the muscles along the front of your shin bone. And if those muscles weaken, not only can you develop drop foot, but also at heel strike when your foot first hits the ground. If you don't have quite enough strength to stabilize it, to allow it to come down onto the ground smoothly, then you might hear that foot slap at heel strike. Other important things in the evaluation is sensory testing. So how do you feel things? The feeling of on the bottom of your foot's important. The feeling of your ankle is important because that links into how do you know where your foot is in space. We'll sometimes call that proprioception. So when you're standing still, do you know that you're starting to slop, lean to the side? And if you're not being told on such a quick level, then you might have to make a very large step to the side to gain your balance. And it's sort of like, for many of us, if you turn out the lights and you're in a room, we don't have the muscles or the proprioception to tell ourselves that you're slightly getting off kilter, and then you can at times drop right on the ground. But that's proprioception. So this all links into balance, and why some of the balance is harder for a lot of us as well is because we don't have that that feedback system working as quickly or as efficiently as possible. Other aspects of an evaluation is looking at how you walk. What kind of tools do you use? Do you use a cane? Do you use walking sticks? Are you using any kind of bracing? What are the positives and negatives to the bracing that you've had in the past? And of course, as I already mentioned, it all ties into what your goals are. What would you like to achieve? So I think having good communication with your orthotist and being able to talk about issues and to get the most out of your appointment is, I think, pretty significant and powerful. I want to, again, go into the basics of the typical CMT foot and why it becomes, a high-arched foot. And it's ultimately as a result of a specific sequence of muscle loss that occurs over time. And you develop this high-arched foot because the nerves in CMT are affected furthest away first. So your toes are going to get affected first because those nerves are the longest, and the myelin or the axons are going to have more of an effect the further you are away from the spinal cord. So at the beginning, you might start to develop claw toes. So often in children, when CMT develops during the developmental years of children, you can see a lot more of this being more prevalent than when CMT really starts to creep in later in life. Some people can start showing symptoms when they're in their 40s and 50s, whereas others in the first year of life. So I will typically see that the earlier some of the muscle imbalance happen, the more you'll get this characteristic look in your foot. One of the most significant aspects of what drives the foot and the structure of the foot is what I have highlighted here is the plantar flexed first ray. So the first ray is the combination of the big toe, the ball of your foot, and the metatarsal that's right behind it. So that area is driven downward from a muscle imbalance. And it's that plantar flexed first ray that starts to really drive the midfoot and drive the hindfoot, and you'll see in a couple future slides. The anterior cavus foot, so that all that means is that the front of the foot is sort of just starting to point downward and starting to all build up into that larger cavus foot. Forefoot adduction at the mid-tarsal joint. So that is the mid-tarsal joints right in the middle of the foot, and that forefoot, the front of your foot, is starting to roll inward. And you can see in that top picture on the left foot, you can see how that's really just rolling inward. It's a good picture to see that. An inverted rear foot with lateral instability. That's typically what we all talk about, is that lateral instability. You'll see why that's so significant for us and how that gets driven and how we can, in many ways, control that. And I want us to be controlling it nice and early on before we get contractures and tightness in muscles. So when all of this happens in the foot that I've just talked about, what you end up happening is it starts going up the chain, up your legs. So you end up getting this external rotation of the ankle and the knee, and that's all relative to the line of progression. So that's when we're walking forward, straight forward, that's the line of progression. But our whole extremity beneath us, as we develop this classic CMT foot, becomes externally rotated. So the actual sequence of the muscle loss is, I'm not going to go through a lot of details in here, but basically there's specific muscles that start driving all of these forces. And I've got some better pictures that are just coming up that really explain in a visual aspect why things happen the way they do and why we would be good to start controlling these deformities early on as well. So I talked about that, the plantar flexed first ray. So there's a muscle called the peroneus longus muscle. If you see on the left-hand side, or I guess it's from your screen, the right-hand side, I've got that bluish arrow scooting down the outside of the foot. That arrow comes in and it connects to the ball of the foot, right underneath the ball of the foot. And it's that peroneus longus muscle that really is overworking to begin with. And it is the muscle that works, that opposes it, isn't working as well. So this muscle ends up working extra hard, and it ends up driving that first, or the ball of your foot, downward. And this is a good diagram to sort of show that ball of that foot. So if you look at the heel and the bottom of the leg, I've got a good drawing there right in the middle where that's perfect alignment, nice and straight. But in this foot, if that is a plantar flexed first ray, that means that that first ray can't get up and out of the way. So the only natural thing that can happen to get your foot flat on the ground is that your hind foot inverts. And now you can see on the right-hand side that that line now has a break in it, and that break is right at the a joint inside your foot and ankle, and that's what gets you tilted to the outside and causes this lateral instability that we generally deal with. And then once we're in this anatomical position, we then have less muscle strength to try to control ourselves from twisting our ankles. So one of the tests that I like to do in the office to see how far is someone plantarflexed, or that first ray plantarflex, called the Coleman block test. And this is a very powerful tool because you can imagine on the left side you can see the toe and the ball of the foot. It's just dropped straight off with that foam block. And if in the case on a foot, if you can get that ball of the foot completely away from driving the hind foot into inversion, then you can see, can that hind foot come neutral and into a nice straight line, the way you can see it on the right side. So if we can get that hind foot into a neutral position, then what it tells us is that we must support the outside of the foot to try to take all of the torque away from that first metatarsal. So I can show you some good pictures here, and this is, this is a picture of my son Ethan. So Ethan, not only was he fortunate enough to get CMT from me, but Elizabeth, my wife, she has just a natural or normal high arched foot. And some feet can be like that. And some people can have a high arched foot and have just no problems with it. So he definitely has Elizabeth's structure of her foot, but then he has my muscle imbalance that created this problem that, we had to surgically at least start the process of trying to get him much more neutral. So you can imagine over time that with more and more forces over time, that this is just going to creep further and further or lateral. And it'll start causing pain at his ankles and his knees. And a great photo underneath the foot here is just showing how there's callus formation on the balls of his feet there. And that's because of that anterior cavus foot. You get the foot in such a structure, and instead of it being a smooth distribution of forces underneath the foot, you get a lot of peak pressures on the balls of those feet. And because that first metatarsal is driving his foot outward, you can see that the baby toe, or the fifth metatarsal head, is just getting so much more pressure, and that's why you end up getting calluses on the fifth metatarsal head, and then also in the midfoot there, which is the base of the metatarsal. So that's what I would consider an extreme classic characteristic of the CMT foot, pes tabus. So as I say, a lot of times you can have a normal high arched foot. And if we look at this, we can see there's a normal foot all the way to the left. There's a slightly higher arched foot, but we'd still classify that one as normal, the second one in. And then if we move all the way to the right-hand side, you can see what a cavus foot looks like as a high arch. Now, I thought it was important to also mention flat feet, too, because, sometimes you will see CMT individuals with very, very flat feet. And often I'll see this developing in older individuals where their CMT has sort of developed later in life, and they get more of an even weakness of their muscles across all of the joints, as opposed to happening in the sequence that I initially talked about. So the normal path of pressure. So it's ultimately what a normal foot does is you strike your heel on the outside, and then you flatten your foot, and then you move over towards the ball of your foot to push off. So that's what we would call a normal path of pressure for normal human locomotion. When we talk about how does the body move throughout normal human locomotion, if you can imagine the center of gravity, so imagine your belly button. Your belly button is going to move up and down just 2 inches, and then it's going to move side to side 2 inches. So that would be normal. Gait pattern is for that center of gravity to just move in a 2-inch square. If you look at a CMT individual, or especially me, it might be a 2-foot square, at least side to side. So ultimately, from a bracing standpoint, we're looking to try to make ourselves more efficient in walking. And the smaller we can get that box, the more efficient we can be. So I always talk about prevention of deformities. So we look at, it starts out as simple foot orthoses. So we want these inserts to try to stabilize the outside of the foot, to try to take the pressure off of that plantar flexor splay. So we call that a forefoot post. Other key things is we want to stretch. You know, if you have a weak anterior muscle, you would like to see that your Achilles tendon doesn't become tight. So stretching that Achilles tendon can be a huge factor throughout the rest of your life for having normal ambulation. If you don't have the range of motion in that Achilles tendon to get yourself through a normal gait pattern, then your foot has no other opportunity other than to sort of cheat at different joints. Some will become way too cavous to try to get the motion, and some can pronate too much to get the motion. So maintaining range of motion is, I think, pretty key. So I've talked quite a bit about posting. You can see in that top photo what I'm talking about, a thicker material along the outside of the foot to allow the foot to be straighter. You can look at this same individual standing on that black insert that was posted incorrectly. He had arch support built onto that insert. So that ended up driving him outward. It made him twist his ankles even more. But if you look at the inserts, the blue ones, you can see that his foot just looks much more straighter, much more neutral. And that's because I took away that force to twist your ankle outward. So it always comes down to, you know, what treatment is the right design for any individual. And all of us are going to have different goals. I really like to consider a brace to be like a tool. And in many ways, there might be no one right device for all of us or for any of us, for any one of us. I find myself that for the most part, I do use those silicone AFOs, and there's a picture of it in the middle. But if I'm going to go out golfing and want to be more active, silicone AFOs just don't provide enough muscle support. They can do it on a basic level, on a day-to-day walking level, but if I want higher activities, that's when I need to go to stronger bracing. And like some of these carbon systems that I've shown in these drawings here. So again, everybody is going to be a little bit different, and that's why it's so important to express to your orthotist what your independent goals will be. So this is, I think, always a great question, and I think a great worry of all of us. You know, do orthoses make the CMT worse? You know, I think we're fearful that we're going to, you know, support our muscles so much that they're going to become naturally weaker. Well, I'm a firm believer that no, that the orthoses are not going to make the CMT worse. In fact, I think that in many ways, an orthosis can allow you to do the stuff that you want to do, and it can allow you to become more active. And in many ways, I think properly moving and moving in a better aligned way is going to make the effects of your CMT better. I like this analogy that we came up with, my wife and I, just talking about, you know, what is a great statement to always have in your mind about what I should be doing with someone with CMT. Well, continue moving today. So I'm going to try to subliminally get you all to think about continuing to move today. I believe that's a huge helpful process for anyone with CMT to maintain their lifestyle. So my second question, I'll just read it here. I'm an active person. However, in my current condition, if I walk more than 5 minutes, my lower leg and thigh begin to really hurt. Will bracing make a difference for me? For example, being able to walk for longer periods of time without experiencing pain. So it's very easy and through experience for me to say yes. Bracing will help that situation because you're not going to fatigue your muscles as quickly if you use a brace. A lot of times we think about bracing as going up the legs, but you know, I always revert back to the foot orthoses. I think that is really powerful. So Maybe a simple insert inside your shoe could help with the alignment of your foot and then allow your muscles to work in a more natural way, and they will fatigue less. So I talk about is that muscle fatigue, and then, it's pretty key to support your muscles with an AFO. And I always like the concept of dynamic bracing, which means to allow your foot to go through most of its range of motion, or all of the range of motion if possible. But most of the range of motion, and you're not going to weaken muscles if you're able to do that, because they're able to shorten and lengthen while you're using them. Question 3. So I've used braces that fit into my shoes with vertical bars on both sides of my ankle. Eventually, those seem to cause discomfort. Do you know if any of the braces that fit on the outside are effective? So I pulled up this picture and I posted it here, because this is what I'm believing or assuming this question is coming from in this type of device. So I would call this a conventional style of AFO. For the most part, we use conventional style AFOs when someone has a lot of swelling. So when they are, when you can't enclose them inside the device. So you give up a little bit with that, because if the body is allowed to swell and then shrink down and not be contained within a container, you're going to give up, because there's a lot less there touching the body. So I find that overall it's a lot harder to get good control of the foot and ankle. So that could be the source of some of the discomfort. Maybe we're just not stabilizing the foot well enough and it's rolling to the outside. There are some strapping that can be put on these as well, but for the most part, I don't find this kind of device as effective for individuals with CMT. Sometimes these are made because the foot is in such a unique shape, or sometimes I don't like to use the word a deformed shape, but it's in such a shape that it's hard to fit into regular shoes, and we have to go with special shoes. Well, if that's true, and we're going with special shoes, we also don't have to really put a conventional brace connected to those special shoes, because those same special shoes could be made around a plastic device or a carbon device that can control the foot a little bit more. My AFOs are flat on the bottom. So when I read that, I sort of imagined that maybe it's this type of dynamic AFO. Those off-the-shelf systems are always going to be flat on the bottom. I wear orthotics, and the shoe insole is on top of the AFO. I'm wondering if the AFO should have the orthotic arch built into it, or is it common to wear orthotics within the AFO? So for the most part, we call these foot orthoses orthotics. So I have a picture of foot orthoses here. And yes, I think it is an excellent move to put foot orthoses into these custom-made AFOs or custom-fit AFOs. And I like to do that because you can remove the insert and you can make adjustments to it. Typically with CMT, we don't have normal sensation, we don't have normal feeling. It's very difficult to get feedback to the orthotist right at that session. It might take a day, it might take 2 weeks, it could take 2 months to really get the proper feedback. Well, I can give myself a lot of extra options if I can build that insert removable such as that. So I think that it is perfectly acceptable to have those insoles built into your systems like that. I think it works, in fact, better. Question 5, how often should AFOs be replaced? How often should AFOs be repadded? How often will Medicare pay for new braces? Once a person needs to wear braces, is there ever a possibility that they might be able to do without them again? So how often should AFOs be replaced? Now, I feel that they should be replaced as often as medically necessary. And as an orthotist, I need to document body changes. Medicare is our guidelines to all insurances, and their policies are quite strict. If you've just gained 20 pounds and you originally weighed 200 pounds, so you've just gained 10% of your body weight, if your brace does not fit anymore, and if I can't adjust it, that is a documentable reason as to why I can provide you with a new device. If you've broken it, or if something is, if you dog ate it or you ran over it in a car, those are all reasons that things can be replaced. Medicare policy does say that a device is supposed to last for 5 years, but again, if your body needs something and you have major complaints, then voice those complaints. You don't need to be stuck. It's always about how well your orthotist can document the necessary or the medical necessity to making a change. So padding can be replaced as often as necessary. Padding can typically last 6 months, but everyone might have slightly different padding. But again, you're not limited. You're only limited by what your body needs. Can anyone do without braces once they've begun wearing them? I guess that comes down to, what type of device do you wear? I wear different types of devices. I believe that once you feel the benefits of wearing an AFO, you're probably not going to not use it for those events that you want to use it for. CMT is progressive, and unless there are some medical breakthroughs, I think once you sort of hit a critical point where you have something, then you'll probably continue with that. And that's why it is important to continue moving today. Keep those muscles working. My young child was diagnosed with CMT. She's a flat and pronated with knock knees. She falls very often. His dad has high arches and seems like hammer toes, but has flat feet at this age as well. I'm concerned the feet are changing too fast or too early. Is this typical for a child under 5 years old with CMT? Well, this was certainly the similar experience we had with Ethan. To begin with, he was very hypermobile and had a lot of generalized weakness, but his joints were quite loose and lax. To begin with, I was actually trying to stabilize his foot and ankle because he couldn't stand because he was so unstable. So I was building devices to offer stability, so to stop pronation. You basically do what the body needs, and the key is to watch your child grow and to transition the device to follow what their needs are. I think that there's nothing normal, but I have certainly seen many children under the ages of 5 that are hypermobile, and then it transitions over to being a little bit more of a high arch and then a little bit more rigid with time and age. Finding shoes that work can be a challenge. What shoes work well? And anything that looks good? I guess that's always in the eye of the beholder. So I generally am recommending shoes that have stability, that they have deep inserts that can be removed, and that there are lace-up with support. I think it's smart for them to be nice and roomy and lightweight. I'll try to name a few. We've got Apex as a great partner with the CMTA. I think they have a lot to offer. Brands that I really like, I've thrown a couple pictures of Team shoes here. They're nice and wide, and they also have very thick insoles. I think that offers a lot of great stability. I know that Merrell's works very well, and Clark's out of the UK. A lot of times you might have to go to more of a European-style shoe. I did see a post on Facebook. Someone was just touting a success of a new shoe that's a Nike Air Mesh. Sometimes any shoe can work. Any New Balance. I have a picture there. I'm always reverting back to do what works for you. What do I do if my child needs a wheelchair for long distances? Do I get a prescription? Do I go to the orthotist to get this? And so I thought I'd just briefly say that, wheelchairs are classified as durable medical equipment. And that is, in fact, also what bracing is, what orthosis is, but there's sort of a different subcategory. So most orthotic and prosthetic providers do not provide wheelchairs, although, depending on your area across the country, some of them will. So there's probably nothing wrong with at least asking your orthotist. And if they don't do it, I'd be willing to bet that they're going to be able to get you linked to a reputable DME provider in your area. It could be a physical therapist, but Typically, I find that it's more by home healthcare companies, where you can get crutches, canes, and beds. And I guess the nice thing about using any of those companies is that they can also bill your insurance. I know when I had surgery on my foot, I ended up I think I ordered a wheelchair on Amazon because it was less expensive and it wasn't going to be covered under my health insurance plan. So question 9 and answer. What do you think about these orthotics? This came from Facebook. Has anyone heard of this brand or know anyone who has a pair or own a pair themselves? I think they might be good for my fly fishing adventures when I trek into the forest to find rivers with pools of feeding trout. So these are Turbomed orthotics. So this is a brand new company that I learned about through, I think it was CMT Athletes. So I love it when we can get the exposure so quickly through Facebook and the web. So someone found me somewhere by surfing the web. I'd never heard of them before, so it's a company out of Montreal. The concept looks great. I think that I like the concept because as many of you know, I use the silicone AFOs, which are great for every day. But, I'm wondering if this can be just something to just click on or to add on. So if I want to go out and play basketball with my boys, it looks simple. I can't comment too much more than that because I haven't tried it. I haven't really felt it. And as I say at the bottom here, maybe can be used as an add-on system. Some of you might just use custom foot orthoses inside your shoes, or you might have an SMO, so supramalleolar orthosis, a device that comes up a little bit higher around your ankles. Maybe you can add on something like this to give you a little bit more support for higher activities. I look forward to getting this into my hand, but keep these things getting posted because, this is a small company. You might just find that he's found an amazing niche for people with CMT. So question 10, when do I know if I'm ready to wear leg braces? I thought the longer I exercise my legs without braces to do the walking for me, the better it is for my muscles. I'm in agreement that you want to do as much as you can to exercise those muscles, but I'm always going to be most concerned about the angulation to your foot and ankle. And are you over-fatiguing any of your muscles? Could you do more if you were wearing braces? And for me, it's just about having a routine life and doing the stuff that I want to do. So those are all of, I guess, the things to sort of evaluate and to always consider maybe that wearing braces doesn't have to be as negative as maybe some people may think that it is, and be maybe thought of as a very positive feature to being able to do the stuff that you want to do. And again, to use the device like a tool. This one was entertaining. Well, my first time with noodles, not even 5 months old, and one breaks. So the reality is that this does happen. And, it's a challenge. These noodles, I believe, are excellent systems, and they have a really good warranty behind them. Many of the warranties are a year, and some of these guys are just so proud and of their companies that they'll do things even beyond a year. The challenge for us as orthotists is to try to really strike that balance between being too rigid of a device, and if it's too rigid, then we're supporting the muscles too much, and you're not really getting them through all of their range of motion and working them, versus being too flexible and still having a bit of a foot slap at heel strike, or not giving you enough push-off when you're wanting to walk faster. So it is hard, and I know as someone who wears braces that it's frustrating too when things break, because insurance companies don't allow us to have backup systems. When we get down like this, we're really affected. So I guess the situation is, and I know your orthotist is always doing the best that they can do, and these things definitely do happen. Question 12. Exercise, stretch, physical therapy, at what point and how often? And so my I just heard something over my my phone. Is everything okay, Bob? I'll keep going. Exercise, stretch, do it now. Don't fatigue your muscles. And again, coming back to the subliminal thought, continue moving today. Just overall how to be healthy. Hello all. I wanted to ask you what you use for socks and sneakers as well as sandals that don't get torn up by your AFOs and are long enough to fold over top of the AFO so they don't creep down. Many times I use a sock from a company called Knit Right, and these are specialty socks. We use them in prosthetics as well, but they're strictly available to individuals in our industry, unless, I don't know, maybe you can find them online. But you can always find these from your orthotist. And some other tricks are using soccer socks. A patient of mine told me the effectiveness of this, and I've given me advice a lot, and boy, it sure seems to work. They're a little bit thicker, nice and long. They work well. And then there's lots of socks on the market that have great wicking properties. Some people love wool. You can get nice thin wool ones, but then you've got a lot of modern technologies, Under Armour and Nike air dry socks. So I can almost feel the muscles wasting away at times in my thighs, specifically the inner thighs right above the knees. Does anyone else feel this way? Well, I certainly do. So I say, been there, doing that. And, I guess the key is to continue to move today. Try to exercise, if you have the opportunity to maybe go into a physical therapy. They can certainly help and teach and train you on how to exercise certain muscles. But I think the key is to always just to continue moving. I was curious if there are any martial artists among us. So yes, there are. I think there's, I know a number of patients who are into martial arts. And, I think other things that are excellent are yoga and a lot of these types of, arts that allow strength training and focusing on balance and stretching. I think these things are just really powerful, tools to help with CMT. I can imagine that if you have been doing martial arts for years and years and, you start to find that your balance is not as great as it once would be, it would be frustrating. Maybe there's consideration to be wearing, some very flexible shoes, and maybe you could wear an insert, a foot orthosis inside those shoes, and that could just help with balance. But I guess some of the reality with having CMT is just being able to, go with the changes. And continue doing the stuff that you want to do. So that's, I guess, some of the positive things that I feel that I've always tried to do in my life. Question 16. I'm hoping to find some people who have gone to Vegas and purchased a Helios brace. I would like to hear about your experience and how the braces are working for you now, and if you feel they're worth the cost. I've contacted the company and booked my appointment for them for the week of February 24th, 2014. So this must have been an old one I pulled off. I'm sure hopefully $13,000 will be worth it, but from what I've read so far, these braces sound like a miracle for people with CMT. I thought it was important to put this here because I do get asked about these Helios a lot. And, I think that I do have a fundamental problem with the price of these braces. I'm in this industry. I know how much things cost, and I, in some ways, I guess ultimately feel that he is, selling something to people, and they've written here, sounds like a miracle. I would hate for people to really think that there's this, pot of gold at the end of the tunnel and that they can be cured from CMT. I know that there's a lot of folks who have had success with these, but I also know of a lot of failures. I sort of wish that this individual who has the company, I do wish that he would, I don't know if it's maybe just, maybe allow others throughout the community to build devices similar. I guess it's a hard concept for me. I think that there's a lot of other companies that have developed braces, the fat braces, the noodle brace. I think all of these guys are doing excellent devices, but they've opened it up to the whole of the country and not just those desperate enough to pay $13,000 for a pair of helios. So I tried not to put that one in writing, but just to sort of talk a little bit off the top of my head on it. Question 17. Is there a special brand or make of KFO for people with CMT? If so, what should I look for? I've just recently joined a support group in my area and found that KFOs I was first using were a lot different than the ones worn by others in my group. You know, I don't think there's any special brand or make, but the concepts of a KFO. Typically, you would use a KFO if you really need a lot more knee support. If you need hyperextending too far, which I know in your case you've got some very serious hyperextension, I think that is a great reason to be wearing a KFO to stop that hyperextension. But you also may need one because of weak quadriceps, so you don't have enough strength in your body to even hold your body weight. So that's where I think these stance control KFOs work very well. They give you incredible stability when you're standing, and then the knee will completely, when you unweight your knee to swing it through, the KFO itself will fully unlock to allow your leg to swing through. And that, I think, is a very modern approach to a KFO. Years ago, we used to have to just lock up the leg and make it a straight leg, which was very difficult to walk with. There's these other joints called posterior offset knee joints. This type of knee joint can also stop hyperextension, but if you have enough quadricep strength that can control you, or at least you can stabilize your leg, then you don't need as large of a system as your stance control. You need the posterior offset just to give your knee some stability as you're standing, and then you and your body will allow that knee to flex as you swing it through, and then bring your heel out to touch the ground at heel strike. So those are some brief ideas for you. I'm not sure my braces are a good fit in serving the purpose for which I need. What should I do? I have a slight drop foot, but my biggest issue is the rolling out of my right ankle. Even with my AFOs, the ankle is still rolling inside the brace. Yeah, ultimately, whether you have to control the pathomechanics. You have to control that foot, whether you're inside the brace or whether it's the whole foot and ankle as well as the brace. So if your ankle is rolling even with inside the brace, you need to try to control that. You know, again, there could be instances where, you know, you just love how small your brace is because you want it to fit in certain shoes and we're not fully controlling everything. You know, I'm probably going to be okay with that if it's meeting all of your other goals. And that's where, you know, a good, solid discussion with your orthotist is of utmost importance. But if you're not liking the rolling out and you're feeling unstable and you want to be more stable, then we really should be trying to do something a little bit more. And we can do it with strapping. We can sometimes do it with posting. But if that is still not sufficient, then we might have to just redesign and make something stronger. And when you make something stronger, you might just very well be, you know, trading off one positive aspect of one for another positive aspect of another. So sort of like a scale, and that's where discussion, I guess, is going to really be the most important thing to do with your orthotist. So a silicone AFO is a good option for CMT patients. How can I still be in trendy shoe choices as a young lady who wears AFOs? So I love the silicone AFOs. I've been pretty, I guess, expressive about that. I think these are a great system, but you really do need to have neutral alignment to be able to use them. I do wear foot orthoses underneath the silicone AFO. That gives me the stability that I need. So my foot can get into these neutral alignments. I've also had surgery to produce that. But at the end of the road, I'm very happy with everything that I've had done, and I love these silicone AFOs because they really do make me work. You know, at the end of the day, I have a busy day. You know, I am tired, but I guess I sort of do feel that I would rather be tired at the end of the day and know that I've worked all day than to be in a situation of where I'm not working my body as much as I could. But I also recognize that that I do need to use stronger devices for higher activities, such as golfing, or such as playing basketball, or long hikes. Okay, question 19. I have bilateral drop foot as well as my ankles roll. Diagnosis with CMT at age 12, and I'm now 53. I've worn bilateral AFOs for the last 10 years. I can barely walk without them. My AFOs are custom fit and made of Kevlar. I'm thinking about carbon fiber bracing. What are the benefits and disadvantages besides cost? Also, what do I look for in someone giving me a good fit with bracing? I've had problems with pain and custom bracing before fixing these. Thank you in advance. So hopefully some of these questions you guys can probably already answer from what I've already worked through in this presentation. You know, some of these devices may have a blend of Kevlar and carbon fiber in them, and a lot of it is what these actual individual products do within the braces. So carbon fiber is very strong, lightweight, and it's when blended with resins, it can provide a lot of energy return. Whereas Kevlar is a very flexible material, and it can be used in laminate as well, and it adds different properties to the braces. So, like I know the noodle brace, I think they use a blend of, and he could easily correct me if I'm wrong, but they could easily use a blend of these Kevlars and carbon fibers and fiberglasses all to make their final product. So there's different benefits and disadvantages to each of these models. I really do like the off-the-shelf models like the Allard AFO because of how they were manufactured. When something is manufactured, mass-produced, they do it under intense pressure and intense heat, and there's so many layers of carbon and Kevlar and other materials all sandwiched into one device that the way that thing functions can be superior to if a lab such as myself does a custom layup of carbons. We just don't have that kind of tooling or the properties to be able to build something. So there's positives and negatives to each one of these devices that are on the market today. And again, talking to your orthotist, I'm going to be able to shoot ideas off of and giving you positives and negatives to each thing. I like people to have options and to be part of the design process. That's my strategy. Okay, I'm new to this site, diagnosed in 2012. I had good mobility with my CMT, only affecting my lower body. At my latest appointment, they suggested I get the Autobach Walk-On Flex AFOs, as well as insole orthotics, which I'll be getting fit for tomorrow. I tried them on and actually liked them a lot to my surprise. I was just curious if anyone else had the experience with these, and if so, how they like them long term, and if they've helped with your everyday life or improvement in your walking. You know, I like these systems. These Autobach Flex AFOs, they're in harmony with the Allard AFOs. They're more of an off-the-shelf type of product. But you're blending an off-the-shelf, you're customizing it to the individual at the time it's fitting, and you're blending them with something custom that goes on top. So I like them because they're an add-on system. You can sometimes just use the foot orthotics, or you can use them together as a combined product. They work very well for mild support, and there's also stronger models like the Allard Blue Rocker, and Autobach has a model called the Reaction. And overall, those layups of carbon fibers are stronger, more dense, and they offer a little bit more push-off at your toe-off. So those are going to be better for higher activities or if you weigh more. It's all about force. As I mentioned, they get an accustomed to orthotics. That is key. Okay, so that sort of brings it to a close, and I think I'm at 8:56.
David?
So, yes.
I have a couple of questions here from people who are listening this evening, and they would like an opinion on a couple of things. So I'm going to just read these off to you here. Someone's curious if you could make a comment on the high price of AFOs. I guess, we're looking at the Helios and other systems, and if you could talk about pricing a little bit, that would be great.
Sure. So, I think Bob mentioned the Helios. They're an outlier. So, yes, even I'm not certain why those are so highly priced. I guess, in some ways, I've probably talked enough about the Helios, but bracing in general, all of the fees set in this industry are set by Medicare. And they are expensive. There's no question that these things are expensive. And I guess the consideration is that there's a lot of design that goes into manufacturing these. There's a lot of expense that goes into, hiring staff. There's expenses that go into, billing insurances and trying to get things paid and liabilities. It definitely is a complicated system. I think you could easily say that there's not, a lot of people in this industry that are getting, super rich doing what we do. I think that, I think we have reasonable careers where I think we're in line with, physiotherapists and such. And, I think that, it's, for me, I guess the frustrating aspect with it is the limitations that we have in being able to provide just one device. I wish that the industry would allow us to be able to provide, if someone is really active enough to go out and do different activities, that why would we limit ourselves to just one type of device? So it's the system that we're in, and I guess it's that same system that's setting the price for these devices. And I think in some aspects the device prices are fair because of I guess the amount of work and the amount of time and the staff that are just required to be able to bill and provide these services. I think a lot of times we might get frustrated with prices if we have a product at the end of that road that is not working well for you. Then you sort of feel gypped on it. But if the product can work well, then maybe you might feel a little bit more comfortable with the expense of something. An analogy that I always make is when I look at what Medicare pays us to do repairs on devices, it's less than what I would pay my automotive mechanic to work on my car. So I think that's maybe just a fair way to try to put it into perspective on what the pricing comes from. I know that most O&P providers, or I'd probably say all, are going to be following that Medicare fee schedule. So I hope this answered your questions in enough depth to make some sense.
And I think that most certainly did. And going forward, I have a couple questions here about, it seems like some people are wearing certain brands and devices and so forth, and there's a couple of people that are trying to figure out, where do I get silicone AFOs, or if I wear toe-offs, would it be better to have custom-fitted braces? These kinds of questions, I guess you would probably send them to your local orthotist, is that correct?
Yes, yeah. The silicone AFOs are originally made in the UK, and they I think unfortunately, I do think you have to be careful where you get the silicone AFO from, because a lot of people just don't have the experience with them. And in fact, a lot of orthotists would not have, just don't get how amazing I believe they are, because they really don't biomechanically control the body in the way we're trained. But I try to describe it that they direct the body, and I like those features. So the silicone AFOs are now made here in the United States. They're under a licensing agreement from the UK, and they are made, and any orthotist across the country could provide them. But I just would urge you to try to find an orthotist that has the experiences with them. And then, Bob, what was the other question? It was in regards to custom AFOs versus off-the-shelf?
Yeah, custom AFOs versus the toe-offs in particular. But I guess, yeah, custom versus product. What is the thinking about? Where do you go from one to another?
I guess it's all about how your body presents. If something can be controlled with some of these off-the-shelf models and then doing a custom insert, then that's the approach that I would typically go. I find that these off-the-shelf carbon systems have better energy returns than some of the custom AFOs on the market. There's no question that the custom AFOs, like if I am going to make a custom carbon AFO, I'm going to send it out to a lab that really specializes in making them. And those labs are available to just people like me. They specialize in making these products for us. So Noodle is one of those companies that really specialize in making something. So if you want something that's a little bit smaller in size, if you don't like the shape or the bulkiness of the Allard toe-offs and you want something more sleek, well, the Noodle can sometimes achieve that. The Noodle can also control, you can customize the Noodle to control the technique a little bit more than what the toe-off can do. Before I had surgery on my foot, I couldn't get into an Allard AFO because my high arch was hitting that lateral strut. So that's a perfect example of needing to make a custom carbon AFO. As time goes on, all of these companies get a little bit better with fabricating things. Custom Composites is a great company that makes these carbon systems available for me if I send a cast out to them. They're just getting better and better with time and understanding how to lay up the products, lay up the materials. And you typically go the custom route when something off the shelf isn't going to be as effective. Sometimes we get stuck as well with, if we do an Allard system and you put a custom foot orthosis on it, some insurance plans are not going to pay for a custom insert to go on top of that Allard. So you might be needing to pay for one portion of the device, and then the other portion of the device might get covered by your insurance in whole or in part. So overall, it might be better for you to choose to go with a complete custom system because the way the policies are set, you might get the whole custom device fully covered. So those are some of the decisions that also get made.
So, David, we're a little bit over time here, but we have 3 very good questions I'd like for you to address if you're willing to give us another 5 minutes or so.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's. One of the questions here is, can you address articulating versus non-articulating AFOs, and how do you know which one is better?
Well, it's always hard to say what is better or what is worse. It's always it's a hard one to answer, but I guess there's a lot of different types of articulating AFOs. I showed you a picture of those of that conventional AFO early on. Those have metal joints, but those same metal joints can be used within a custom carbon or a custom plastic AFO. and they can direct the foot, neck, and ankle in a very specific way. So when we need a lot of control and a lot of strength, we'll typically go with these stronger metal types of articulating systems. Now, articulating can also be a little bit more simple, and it can have these little rubber joints that offer, dorsiflexion assist. So these rubber joints are designed to just lift up the foot. And for some, that's all they're looking to achieve. It's just something that gives them a little bit of swing phase clearance, and their calf muscle is strong enough to push off. So they don't need as much of that push-off control. And an articulating AFO for some may give a little bit more or complete range of motion. So for some, they cannot get onto driving a car or a standard, car with a like an Allard AFO that is dynamic, allows your foot to move, but it takes force to allow it to move. Whereas an articulating AFO might just very well be able to go through that range of motion a little bit easier. Again, all of these things are linking into what those individual needs and concepts are from each individual. So I try not to think of something being better or worse or wrong for CMT or whatever. As ultimately what we're looking to do is try to neutralize alignment, stabilize alignment. That is the most important thing. And then if you've got some muscle weaknesses, you want to try to give some of those muscle weaknesses back to you. And that's where these dynamic systems are able to give a little bit more of that, more spring to your step, more bounce to your step, whereas sometimes articulating AFOs, they're not able to do that in the same way that a dynamic brace can.
Okay, and finally, I want to just say that we have one more question here from a woman, and we'd like to know, when you meet with an orthotist for the first time, what kind of assessment should you expect?
Well, I can flip through back to my second or third slide. Maybe you can review some of that at the beginning, but I think that the most important thing is communication. You need to be able to feel comfortable with the person. This is your device. This is designed to enhance your life. I believe you should be empowered to ask any and all questions, to get a device that's going to work well for you. It needs to be comfortable. You don't need to break in the device. The device should be pretty well comfortable, and otherwise you're not going to wear it. There could very well be some things as part of your body that just, I can't build you the device that you might really want, but I'm going to do everything I can do to try to explain to you why something is one way. But I'm never going to tell you that you need to be uncomfortable, or you need to develop a sore, or you have to break in the AFO. I think it's the most important thing is the rapport that you have with your practitioner. I guess I'm an advocate of finding, someone who has experience, someone who has interest in CMT. We're trying to educate practitioners and educate patients across the country on to empower yourself to know what questions to ask. And I'm hopeful that forums like this can sort of get some information out. I know a lot of the presentations around the country can sort of help spread the word.